Hey everybody, and welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad to see you back around these parts. It's always a lovely thing to see you around here. I have a new light for this setup right now. It might seem a little bit different if I can change the warmth of it. Does that look better? Does that look worse? I can't even tell. I'm trying to just make this production quality a little bit better. I've been told I need a lighting because I get a little bit dark. I do film this in my apartment, usually after hours. I don't have that much exposure to light, so that's why I don't really don't always see that much illumination in my face, but now I have this nifty little light thing over here, so hopefully it looks a little bit better. This episode today, you saw my last week's episode where I was talking about the year in review for JavaScript as a whole, and I talked about many things that happened this past year that I thought was interesting and exciting, and things that I wanted to share with you. This week, I'm doing pretty much the same thing, except a special React edition. Just React, year in review, 2018. Amazingly, there was enough news about React, enough development and changes this past year to necessarily warrant its own video. There was a lot of things happened this past year in React land, and it's kind of amazing to see how things have just gradually moved. Last year, we ended the year in September of 2017, so right before beginning of 2018 with React 16, which was a big, huge release. And if there was a theme for what happened in React in 2018, it was mostly refining React 16 and developing the foundational blocks upon which the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years of React will build upon. A lot of just primitive things that have happened this past year in React that is putting React in a good place for the future. So this was very much, if you ever follow the TikTok philosophy with like the Apple land, where there's a big release one year, then a smaller, more refinement release another year, and then they just kind of do that back and forth. This was definitely a year of the talk, if I get those correct, tick and talk, where it was the React team kind of refining, standing down, and making sure that their core principles and practices are as strong and sturdy as possible, so that in future years, when they actually start building things on top of what they've made this past year, it's not gonna all fall to shit. So I have a list together. I'm also gonna have a blog post, which might already be out depending upon which way you've actually looked into this, about what happened this past year in the land of React. Let's begin. In January, all the way back in January 2018, they first started talking about changing the lifecycle hooks for React. This might already seem like old news because it is. It happened in January, but this was when they actually first had an RFC proposing to deprecate component will mount, component will receive props, all these lifecycle hooks that, as we learned later, were problematic for concurrent React. That happened all the way in January. And also in January, what happened was the new React Context API was merged into React proper. For so long, they had this old legacy context API that they said, don't use it except if you know what you're doing. So it's kind of like this for you new React engineers and those a little bit more novice, don't touch this, there's dragons, but if you really need to, there's this thing that does exist. But now in January, they actually finally merged a supported context API that they are now developing on top of and building out and trying to get more features inside of. In February was a very big month for not React, but React Native, when they actually finally moved the relicensing of React Native to MIT to match React. If you remember, I guess it was 2017 at this point, when React was having that whole license conversation. That was so annoying to live through, people just being freaked out about this license. I know there's good reasons for it, but as someone who was unaffected by it, it was just me kind of just sitting on the sidelines waiting to see when it would be over. But in February, they finally brought that license change to React Native, including Fresco, Metro, and Yoga, which is like the primitive libraries that React Native kind of builds upon on the native side, not the JavaScript side. In March was a big month for React. They had 3 big blog posts in March. The beginning of March started off with React Suspense, where they started for the first time publicly talking about React Suspense, which we now know more as concurrent React, and it used to be called async React, but it's essentially this new way of having React have 2 trees of UI that it can render concurrently, they had a conference that they presented it at, and it kind of, I think it ended up making more confusion than it made hype and confusion together without much clarity. So it was definitely a year trying to repair that clarity there, which I think they've managed to do, but it definitely took the greater part of 2018 to do that. In March, they also finally had an update about async rendering in async, now known as concurrent. That was a paired blog post with React Suspense. Again, same thing that we've been talking about this past year about React working on concurrent React. Then, of course, they ended March with the release of React 16.3, which is probably the longest running release of React for this past year. That actually included the lifecycle changes that were talked about in January, that were talked about in blog posts in March, and also finally released the new context API. So it took from January to March to finally release that new context API, which goes to show that, yes, JavaScript moves fast, React moves fast, but still that's 2 months of just from merging to actually getting it into production. That takes some time, and it's just good to see it not be rushed out the door. April, not really React specific, but Redux 4 was released. It's good. Not a big update, but it was good to see the forward progress there. In May was a weird month. React Suspense, the first version of the React Suspense component, was merged into master, showing more forward progress in that world. The whole React Suspense, concurrent React, async React, has had a very rocky start this past year, mostly because of what happened later with hooks and having that kind of be done in private, but then publicly. And it's been a big development year for React's team to just learn what it is they need to do to make React successful. And also what's kind of fun is that in May of 2018, React turned 5 years old. Not many frameworks get to turn that old and still be widely used around the internet, and React managed to turn it off. For June, I have nothing that happened. Nothing happened in June that I could find in the world of React. In July, they opened a new GitHub issue about an umbrella issue to track releasing React Suspense to open source. The issue was big at the time. Doesn't really seem to be actively maintained that much nowadays. I looked at it. It was last updated in November. We'll see how it goes. In August, the PR for React.lazy was opened against React, which we now know was released. React.lazy lets you do code splitting and lazy loading. I have other video that tells you more about it. If you are interested, check it out. Hopefully you'll learn something from that. React Fire was also talked about in August. React Fire, not really talked about that much because it's very much in R&D. It's very much in development. React Fire is to React DOM as React Fiber was to React. And React Fire is kind of paying down a lot of the tech debt and also taking a lot of the learnings that the React team has learned over this past 5 years and applying it and modernizing React DOM. React DOM being the renderer for the web. And that's an ongoing project. It's still going on. It's going to take a while, but it'll be very exciting to see what actually comes out of it. I don't really have any other details besides that because it is in R&D right now, but it's very exciting. October, Create React App 2 was released. Not really React itself, but it's definitely the ecosystem. Then October was when React 16.6 was released with the React.lazy, React.memo, and improvements to the new context API, having there be a context type, so you could actually still use context with props instead of functional render render props. You can now use it as the old context API used to work. So it was them kind of like trying to push forward into the future with the context API, how you have a component that would take a render as a prop, a function as a prop, and then seeing the pain that it was causing the ecosystem and providing this context type props. That was what the old context API had to begin with. So it's good to see the React team live and learn, and also React.lazy got finally merged out there. And of course, the biggest news in October that was definitely the one that's still kind of rocking the React ecosystem was the announcement of React hooks. If you don't know what React hooks are, you have not been following this YouTube channel. I've talked about it with so many videos about what React hooks is. It's so exciting. I can't wait to use it at work. It's not actually released yet. React hooks essentially was a way to use React class component features in React function components. So you could have states and lifecycle behavior in a function component and not require a class component. Very, very exciting. November was when the hooks RC was merged, which was funny, kind of like the chicken before the cart, or whatever that metaphor is. But hooks got released to the public, then an RC came out after. Well, they came out at the same time, the RC and the hooks announcement, and it was November when the actual hooks RC was merged after letting the community talk about what the implications were and having the React team a chance to respond to it as well. So that was merged, and now hooks is going to actually be out in the next version of React. And in December, two things happened. React Redux 6 came out, which finally started to use the new React Context API, which came out all the way in March. So big change. So I'm glad they didn't rush it, because that would have been horrible to have that be a moving target. So I'm glad they took their time. But it took almost a year to get the React Redux using the latest versions of React. And the most exciting part of December was a new blog post from the React team about the React 16.x and future roadmap. Pretty much addressing the confusion and the hype that had been talked about all the way back in March about what's happening to React, what does the future hold, what should you expect, what's gonna happen when. I was actually enjoying seeing that blog post be updated in real time. As you saw PRs go in, the first version was talking about spring 2019, fall 2019. People were like, hey, you're talking to an international audience. Your spring is not my spring. Can we make that a little bit more international friendly? Which is absolutely a correct point. It's just funny to see, like, if I were to write a blog post about that, nobody would really care, because I still have a very small audience. But with React being such a high profile, that is a thing that does matter to help make things be as clear as possible, which was very entertaining to watch happen, but also a good learning lesson as well. And that's kind of where React ended in December, with just a kind of state of React, like what's going to happen for the future of React, where things are going. The roadmap they laid out is very exciting. Hooks is coming out 2019. More support for, actual support for concurrent React is coming in 2019. Data fetching, concurrent data fetching, which I'm very excited about. I will have so many things to say about that when it actually gets official. I don't like talking about things that are not done yet. It's kind of like critiquing a unfinished painting and saying, hey, that person has no head. And then it's like, no shit, I didn't finish the painting. Let me finish the painting before I tell you that it has no head. That's my little rant aside. That's kind of React's state of 2018. It was a big year for React. Again, there were some big things this past year, but it also, if you look at it in the scope of everything that happened, it was very well and methodically thought out, because the decisions made this year are going to definitely have an effect on React for the future. And what that future holds, we had that blog post that gives us a glimpse, but it's just exciting to see the React community grow. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. I hope you learned something new and got to enjoy this little trip down memory lane with me as well. Let me know if you like the light. This light is, how do I change this if I just go like this? That looks like oh, that's way too bright. Oh man. I don't know what that really means. This is like now it's yellow. I don't think it looks as good. Let me know what you think about the light. Does it look better? I don't know. It takes 6 AA batteries, which are gonna be really expensive to replace. So you need to find one that just has something a little bit easier to use. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe. This is the last video of the year, probably. I'm gonna go down and take vacation, but thanks for listening, thanks for watching. Tell your friends, family, and your pets, because I find that dogs and cats love listening to my YouTube videos. They howl with such joy. Catch you again later. Bye.